What's good, Orange Nation? It's Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Happy Tuesday. And we're going to pivot here and do a little bit of Syracuse basketball and recruiting today. Certainly, plenty more football stuff going on later in the week. Syracuse football got their first win over the weekend, came back, beat UConn, playing Colgate on Friday night. So we'll get to that later in the week. But I wanted to catch up on a couple things basketball related. And obviously, as basketball season gets here, we'll be doing more basketball than football, but still doing football and vice versa now. But I couldn't not talk about Jim Boeheim and Carmelo Anthony and what happened over the weekend. Carmelo Anthony got into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame not once but twice over the weekend, and Jim Boeheim, who had already been inducted for being the head coach at Syracuse, got inducted a second time. So Boeheim and Melo both went in for the 2008 Olympic team, aka the Redeem team, and then Carmelo got in, for his accolades throughout his career. And I'm an old school Syracuse guy. I went to Syracuse in the late '90s. I grew up on Jim Boeheim. I had graduated Syracuse 3 years before Melo was there and helped them win the title. Excuse me. But those two guys mean a lot to me. Personally, just because, and I know some people don't like Jim Boeheim's kind of snarky attitude, or at least when he was a coach, but I think behind the scenes, he's actually a pretty good guy. I've gotten to talk to him a few times as a media member, but I wouldn't say like I know him. But, it's hard to quantify the impact that Jim Boeheim obviously had on Syracuse basketball and the brand and building up that program. And the same for Melo, even though he was only there for 1 year. So I have a question for you all, and drop your thoughts in the comment section. Like, where would you rank Carmelo in terms of Syracuse basketball players? Like, some people would probably say, okay, he's like number one because he only played 1 year, but he led them to a title, and he was National Freshman of the Year, and all these other second team All American, all these accolades. But then other people would say, well, he only played 1 year, so he's up there. But you got to put like Pearl or Dave Bing or Derek Coleman. I could go on and on. But I don't know if I'd put Melo one just because he was only there for 1 year. So I don't know if he's the greatest. He had the greatest career ever because it was only 1 year. But is he the most important player in Syracuse basketball history? If not, again, so I'd make a case for like a Pearl Washington in terms of putting them more on the map with the Big East and recruiting and all that. Or you could say Jim Boeheim, who also played there and then coached for 47 years. But Melo's up there, and obviously his son Kyan is going to be a freshman there. And there were some quotes from Jim over the weekend talking about this is Carmelo's weekend, even though JB was getting into the Hall of Fame as well, part of the Redeem team, but it's Melo's weekend, and he's done so much for Syracuse. He gives back, continues to give back. And there was a quote here: he continues to give back to Syracuse. Whatever we ask him to do, he's done, and that's a great tribute to who he is as a person. And we're really lucky to have him. And Syracuse is, and look, Carmelo. When he retired, I think he's still technically in the top 10 in all-time scoring in the NBA. If he'll probably, he'll move down as other guys move ahead of him, but he retired, I think, number 8. Yeah, he didn't win an NBA title, didn't even get to an NBA final. I think he got to the conference finals once with Denver, but he won multiple gold medals, one of the most decorated Olympic players ever, won the chip at Syracuse. So, he's not like a top 10 or 20 player in the history of the league, but he's a top 50 or top 75 guy, and and he's doing other things now, other business ventures, and he means so much to Syracuse, and it's really cool that he'll be up there a lot, this year with his son playing and Kyan's mom too. I don't know. It's just it was a really beautiful weekend to see Carmelo get inducted, and then obviously the second time, and then JB, and they're just two really important people for me personally in terms of Syracuse basketball. And so congratulations to Melo and to Jim Boeheim, and looking forward to seeing Melo on campus this year. And I'm just so I'll leave it at this. I'm so fascinated to see how Kyan does, and I don't think any fan would expect Kyan to be the same player as Melo in his freshman year. Like no one expects, I hope, expects Kyan to average 22 points and 10 rebounds. Well, he's a shooting guard, Melo's a forward, but you know what I'm saying? Like I hope Kyan gets to play some this year, and I hope he stays more than 1 year and has an impact. And if they hopefully can make the tournament, great. But like if he plays at Syracuse 2 to 3 years and they make the tournament, but they don't win a chip, that doesn't mean he's not going to have a good series. Comparing him to his dad is just an unfair comparison. Carmelo came into college, I think, as the number one recruit in the country, or one at top five. And you know, that was the early 2000s when recruiting rankings and stuff weren't quite as robust as they are now. But Kyan, in his own right, he's a top 10 shooting guard, top 35, top 45, top 40 overall player. He earned it. He had a good senior year at Lehigh, Long Island Lutheran in New York. Made some All-American games, was hurt for part of the season at the beginning. But, you know, it's just going to be fun to watch them, and it's going to be fun to see Melo up there. And I'm curious if Carmelo's going to get involved with, you know, NIL stuff and all that. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Congrats to Melo and Jim Boeheim, and I can't wait to see Kyan play this year. All right, so now we're going to do a couple of recruiting things. And, you know, one thing that is I'll be tracking for Syracuse Central and you know, other places where I cover Syracuse sports. So last week, I believe it was Wednesday the 3rd, the fall recruiting period opened, and it's open for a while. And there's sometimes there's quiet periods or dead periods, but what it means is that this contact period means is that not only can Syracuse host recruits on campus for official or unofficial visits, but they can also they're also out on the road, so to speak, going to recruits' open gyms at their high schools and or conducting in-home visits. And so, you know, it's only been 5 days since it started, and we're already seeing some nuggets of stuff coming in about who Syracuse out and about checking out. So I just wanted to, you know, kind of update you here about some of those. One was, and this comes as no surprise whatsoever. Last week, I believe on the first day of the fall recruiting period, the staff was in for Jordan Smith Jr., a 2026 five-star shooting guard, and according to 24/7 Sports, the number 2 overall prospect in the senior class. Jordan plays at St. Paul VI Catholic High School in Chantilly, Virginia, which is part of the DMV, the Washington, D.C. area, my hometown. And he's got a Final Six that includes Syracuse. He's unofficially visited Syracuse about a year ago. He said he wants to visit again. We'll see if that happens. I think a lot of fans assume that he's headed elsewhere. His Final Six includes Duke, Arkansas, Georgetown, Connecticut, Syracuse, and Indiana. Like if I had to bet on Syracuse getting Jordan Smith or taking the field, the other 5 teams, I'll take the field. And, you know, I think Duke has some buzz, but I wouldn't count out Georgetown. They're a hometown team and have been recruiting him hard for a long time. Syracuse has been recruiting Jordan Smith hard for a long time. They offered him a scholarship in early May of 2023, so they've been recruiting him for over 2 years. And they've been on him in terms of watching him at St. Paul VI and on the AAU circuit. He played for Team Takeover and EYBL. Brendan Strawn is the lead recruiter, and he used to be a Team Takeover assistant. So did Adrian Autry. Autry also used to be an assistant at St. Paul VI. So as I've talked about before, Syracuse has deep ties to the DMV, and Jordan Smith has acknowledged that, and he's talked about Brendan Strawn being his guy, and they're super close. And Strawn's traveled overseas to see him the last 2 summers when Smith won gold medals for different USA basketball junior national teams. So Syracuse is putting in the work for a Smith. That doesn't mean they're going to get him, but you can't fault them for giving it a go here. So that's one of the guys they've been in for at an open gym so far. Another guy they've been in for is Theo Edema, who is a 2027 4-star big man, top 40-ish overall prospect. He plays at the Cushing Academy in Massachusetts, and they offered him earlier this summer, and it looks like he's emerging as a priority recruit for Syracuse in the 2027 class. And then a couple other guys that they've been in for include Jaylon Lyons, who is a 2027 4-star point guard from the DMV. He plays at, I'm totally blanking on the where he plays, Grace Christian School. It's a prep school in Prince George's County, Maryland, part of the DMV. I think it's Grace Christian. I should have known that ahead of time. Sorry about that. But they offered Lyons over the summer as well. and he's fast rising. Like when they first offered him, and I was writing about it before Syracuse Central got off the ground, though, when I was writing for other places, he was like hovering around the top 100, and now I'm pretty sure he's inside the top 50 or 60, so he's moving up. At least two other guys that they've been in for, or excuse me, one other guy that they've been in for that we know about publicly, and I'll continue to drop nuggets and intel on that. But this was an interesting one. So they've been in for Christian Collins, who's a 2026 five-star forward and a top 5 national prospect in the 2026 class, and they offered Christian over the summer. They had been in for him on the UIBL circuit in the latest AAU season, and then this past week they were in for him at an open gym. I don't know if they conducted an home visit. I don't think they did, but I could be wrong. But they were in for him at an open gym, and he plays at St. John Bosco High School in California, and St. John Bosco is going to be a really good team this year. And you know, Syracuse has offered more than 20 guys in the 2026 class. Obviously, they're pursuing a smaller group that includes like a Jordan Smith and Duron Rippey and a few other guys. And maybe Christian Collins is emerging as a priority target. We'll see if he visits Syracuse, but I did think it was interesting that Syracuse was in to see him. I haven't seen like a lot of interviews recently that he's given talking about his like top schools, but hey, listen, maybe Syracuse is in the mix. So those are some of the guys that they've seen so far. As I see more stuff, maybe I'll do like another episode or another segment when I do some Syracuse basketball stuff, and I'll talk about guys that they're in for at open gyms and maybe in-home visits as well. So we'll move on from there, and we're going to continue with Syracuse recruiting, and we're going to talk here a little bit about various Syracuse basketball targets in different classes that have transferred to new schools for the upcoming 2025-26 season. And the reason I thought about doing this today is because I had seen a couple of newer developments about top recruits, Syracuse recruits transferring, and there were some earlier this summer as well that I'll mention here. But like I'll start off with some of the bigger ones that were like newer, and one is five-star power forward Zion Green in the 2027 class. He's a top 15 national prospect. He actually unofficially visited Syracuse 2 weekends ago, and I'll talk about that in the next segment. But he recently transferred to the Mount Zion Prep in Lanham, Maryland, which is in Prince George's County in the DMV. And he transferred there, and actually earlier this summer, another guy that I think Syracuse is taking a look at, Jacob Canton, also transferred there. He is a 2027 four-star guard. So Mount Zion Prep plays in the grind session, or they're going to play in the grind session, which is a pretty robust prep circuit. But so, I'll be keeping tabs on Zion and Jacob. Jacob, I believe he played in Syracuse Elite Camp, not this August, but 2 Augusts ago. But when the 2027 contact period opened on June 15th this year, when college coaches could start reaching out directly to rising juniors, Jacob heard from Syracuse. So they haven't offered him as far as I know, but it's something to monitor. And Mount Zion Prep's going to be really good. So some other guys to note, a couple of guys actually transferred to the Professional League Overtime Elite, which is based in Atlanta. And these three guys that did, they all hold Syracuse offers. 2027 four-star guard Clyde Walters, 2027 four-star big man, power forward / center Caleb Origo. I'm mispronouncing his name, so sorry about that. Origo, I think is how you pronounce it. So sorry, Caleb. But yeah, those two. And then another 2027 four-star point guard, Anderson Diaz, who was really good playing up a division in EYBL over the summer. Other guys that have transferred that have Syracuse offers, or at least hold interest from Syracuse, Alex Costanza, a 2026 five-star guard / small forward. He transferred to the Spire Academy in Ohio. He officially visited Syracuse last fall, and also transferring to Spire is 2027 five-star prospect King Gibson, who has heard from Syracuse since that contact period opened in mid-June. Von Carvalho, who will officially visit Syracuse later this month, transferred to CIA Bella Vista in Phoenix, where a couple other Syracuse recruits also play. CJ Rosser, who's a 2027 five-star and could be in the running for the number one overall spot in that class. He transferred to the Southeastern Prep Academy. Dakari Spear, who's a 2026 four-star shooting guard and a priority target for Syracuse, he transferred to Dynamic Prep, which made the finals of Chipotle Nationals this past spring. And he recently visited Syracuse. I'll talk about that in the next segment. And then a couple others to note. MJ Madison, who holds a Syracuse offer. He's a 2026 four-star power forward. He recently transferred from Lehigh to Prolific Prep, which used to be based in Napa, California, but now is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And then Patrick Oti, a 2027 four-star prospect. He is headed to the St. Thomas More School in Connecticut, and he holds a Syracuse offer. And Mekhi White, who has interest from Syracuse and I think will get offered. He's a 2028 four-star point guard. He transferred to the Brewster Academy. Okay, so that wraps up that segment. We'll definitely keep an eye on these guys and other transfers and how they're all faring in their senior years or junior years or even sophomore years, but how they're faring in the upcoming season. And we'll move here. The last segment, we're going to talk about. So the fall recruiting period, as I mentioned, it's certainly Syracuse coaches will be out on the road when they can to do in-home visits and go to open gyms, but they also will be hosting recruits on campus for official and unofficial visits. So I just wanted to go through a couple of them. Like I mentioned earlier, 2027 five-star power forward Zion Green, who is now at Mount Zion Prep, he unofficially visited 2 weekends ago. This past weekend, 2026 four-star shooting guard Dakari Spear, who is now at Dynamic Prep, he officially visited Syracuse, I was told. Later this month, on the same weekend, 2026 five-star point guard Duron Rippey Jr. from New York City and 2026 four-star small forward / wing Vaughn Carvalho, who I said moved to CIA Bella Vista. They will be officially visiting Syracuse during the same weekend. In October, Asher Elson, who is a 2026 four-star wing / power forward, he will officially visit. He plays in Overtime Elite. And then Theo Adema, it looks like might be officially visiting Syracuse this week sometime. I don't have a date, but there was some stuff on social media indicating that he was officially visiting this week. So keep an eye on that. And then also Jalen Lyons, that 2027 four-star point guard, fast-rising point guard from the DMV, he recently said in an interview with my buddy Zach Smart on Zag's blog that he will definitely be visiting Syracuse. I don't have a date yet. I'll keep tabs of sources to see when that will be, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he visits. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll see if Christian Collin visits. Jordan Smith Jr., Alex Costanza possibly could visit a second time. His dad has told me, there's some other guys across different classes that might be prime candidates to visit Syracuse. So we'll keep tabs on all this stuff. But I hope you enjoyed doing a little bit of Syracuse basketball and basketball recruiting. I'll definitely keep it more on the football side during football season, and then transition more to basketball. But I don't want to neglect either sport when the other one's in their prime time, and certainly when there's big developments and news, I'll have that. So let me know what you liked and didn't like today. I appreciate you tuning in. This is Neil Adler with Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. I will talk to you again tomorrow, friends. Take care, and thanks again for listening.